The Apartment Remembers, Part 1. I moved into apartment 3E the way people step into a grave, not because they want to die, but because there's nowhere else left to fall. It was raining that day, not a dramatic thunderstorm, but a slow, gray, endless drizzle, the kind that soaks into your bones and settles there. I had 2 suitcases, a dying phone, and the quiet hope that anonymity might be enough to start over. The building was older than it looked. 4 stories, brick stained from decades of weather. A cracked tile mosaic in the entryway read, Ashfield Arms, half the letters worn away. The interior smelled faintly of old laundry and something sweet that didn't belong. No one greeted me when I arrived. The landlord had left the keys in an envelope taped to the door. 1 key for the building, 1 for 3E. That was it. Inside, the apartment was small but not claustrophobic. High ceilings, warped wood floors, and a single window that looked out into a narrow brick alley. Pale yellow walls that might have once been white. I liked that it felt unremarkable, forgettable. But even on that first day, something felt off. I can't explain it. It wasn't anything visible. No bloodstains, no mysterious drafts, or misplaced furniture. It was more like a presence, subtle, but heavy. Like the apartment was holding its breath, waiting for something. I told myself it was just nerves. The first night, I barely slept. Every noise was amplified, the radiator groaning, pipes clanging, a floorboard creaking somewhere deeper in the building. But it wasn't until the second night that the door opened. I had closed it. I remember that clearly. It's a ritual for me. I must sleep with the door shut, not out of fear. Exactly, it's just how I draw the line between awake and asleep, between what's mine and what isn't. But around 2:11 a.m., I opened my eyes and saw the bedroom door wide open, not ajar, wide open, silent. I lay frozen, trying to listen past the pounding in my chest. The hallway beyond was still, but darker than it should have been, the kind of black that swallows shape. I told myself I must have forgotten to close it, but I got up, shut it again, and locked it. When I woke the next morning, the toothbrush I hadn't used yet was damp. The bristles curled. There was a hair in the sink. I live alone. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I bumped the sink. Maybe there was moisture in the air. Maybe I was still too wound up, seeing patterns in dust. But I started to feel watched. Not dramatically. Not in the horror movie way, with cold hands or flickering lights. It was quieter than that, like someone was standing just behind me, looking at the back of my neck. A whisper, without sound. I found the photographs on the 3rd day. They were in a box I don't remember packing, sealed with duct tape and labeled in handwriting that looked like mine but didn't feel like mine. Inside were photo albums, childhood stuff, pictures from birthdays, vacations, school events. I smiled at a few awkward grins, missing teeth, plastic hats. But in one photo, I stopped smiling. It was my 8th birthday. I remembered the party, the cake, the dinosaur-themed decorations. But in the background, standing half in the kitchen doorway, was a man I couldn't name. Not a guest, not family. Tall, pale, dressed in dark clothes, just watching. His face was slightly blurred, like the camera refused to focus on him. I thought it was just a one-time anomaly, some stranger who wandered into the shot. But as I flipped through the album, he kept showing up. A trip to the beach, there he was, standing behind a fence. A Christmas morning, standing by the tree. Graduation far in the crowd, but unmistakable. Each time, his expression was the same. Not menacing, not even angry. Just disappointed. I called my mother. I asked if she recognized him. She hesitated, then said, "That's Stephen, your brother." I told her I don't have a brother. A longer pause. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "not this again." Later, I found a Facebook message from someone named Stephen M. "Haven't seen you since the lake house. Glad you're back." I don't remember a lake house. I started keeping a journal after that, writing everything down. What I ate, what I wore, what I said. trying to make reality hold still. But even the act of writing began to feel fragile, like the words might change when I wasn't looking. One night, I opened to a page I hadn't written yet, but it was full. My handwriting. The entry said, "Went for a walk at midnight. The man in the hallway says it's almost time. He says I promised I'd never forget." I stared at it for an hour. The next night, the words were different, longer. He says I left him behind, that I cut him out, that I buried him, but he never stopped screaming. I tore the pages out, burned them in the sink, but they always came back. I started hearing footsteps. They weren't coming from above, not from next door. They came from the walls, sometimes pacing slowly, sometimes standing still. Occasionally, I'd hear a single breath, long and rattling, just inches beyond the plaster. Once, I pressed my ear to the wall behind the fridge, where the sound was loudest, and heard something breathing. Then a soft voice. "You lived here before. You never left." Reality was unraveling. I'd open a cupboard and find items I didn't own: a mug with the name Stephen on it, a book of matches from a place called the Hollow Root Inn, a framed photo of me standing with a man whose face had been scratched out violently. I don't remember that picture being taken. I don't remember that version of myself. Sometimes, I'd catch myself doing things I didn't mean to do, writing phrases on napkins without noticing, locking and unlocking the door repeatedly, whispering to myself in the mirror. And then I remembered, not all at once but in pulses, glimpses. The first time I lived in 3E, years ago, before I disappeared, before I erased my name and cut ties. Stephen had moved in with me. I told him I'd help him get back on his feet, but we fought, constantly, screaming matches that shook the walls, until one night, it went too far. I pushed him. He hit the radiator. He didn't get back up. I waited. I checked. I knew. But I didn't call anyone. I pulled the fridge aside and broke through the thin plaster behind it. I made a hollow space. I dragged him in, wrapped in a tarp. I covered the hole. I moved away. I forgot. I made myself forget. And now, the apartment was remembering for me. That's why the door opened. Why the journal wrote itself. Why the photos changed. The apartment was waking me up. Or maybe punishing me. Last night, I looked in the mirror and saw someone else. Not a stranger. Me. But wrong. The version I buried. He smiled. Not cruelly. Not with joy. Just patiently. And said, "It's your turn now." The Apartment Remembers, Part 2. I waited until morning. I told myself that would make it easier. That whatever the apartment was, however it had twisted itself around me, the daylight would unravel it. That the door would open into a world I still recognized. It was 6:14 a.m. when I packed my bag. I didn't take much. Just clothes, my phone, a photo of my mother, and the old journal, though the pages had all turned blank overnight, like they'd never been written on at all. I opened the front door. The hallway beyond was still wrong. Longer than it had any right to be. The wallpaper wasn't the same faded brown, but a peeling green floral pattern I didn't recognize. No windows, no sound. I stepped out anyway. My footsteps echoed like I was in an empty train station. I turned left, toward the stairwell or where it should have been, but after maybe 20 paces, I passed another door. Apartment 3E. I stopped, looked at it. My hand trembled as I touched the knob. Cold, familiar. I didn't open it. I backed away and turned, walking quickly now. 30 more steps. 40, another door. 3E again. This time, the wood was newer, polished. The doormat said, "Welcome home." I ran. I sprinted through the endless hallway, turning corners that shouldn't have existed. Past more doors marked 3E, some warped and broken, others pristine, some with locks on the outside. Eventually, I reached a stairwell. I threw myself into it and climbed down 2, 3, 4 flights, but when I burst out at the bottom, panting, I was in the same hallway again. 3. The doormat was gone. This time, the door was slightly ajar. I backed away, closed my eyes, tried to focus on something real, the feel of my phone in my pocket, the sound of my breath, the burn in my legs. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in my apartment, inside, not at the door, not in the hallway, just there. Back. The bag was still in my hand. The journal was gone. I laughed. A dry, cracked sound that didn't feel like mine. Something deep in the walls laughed with me. I tried leaving dozens of times. I set fire to the door once, thinking maybe destruction was the only way out. The flames licked at the wood but refused to catch. Smoke filled the room, but when I opened a window to scream for help, there was no city, just a sky, the color of ash, and an endless grid of brick buildings with windows like eyes. I threw the phone across the room. It cracked. When I picked it up again, it displayed a single message, repeating on a loop. You were always here. At first, I fought. Every day I tried a new exit. I smashed mirrors, ripped through walls, pulled up floorboards, found nothing but rot and silence. Eventually, I stopped trying to leave. Instead, I tried to wait it out. I marked time by drawing lines on the wall, one for each sleep. I stopped calling them days. There was no sun anymore, just a soft, dying light that glowed through the window regardless of the hour. When I reached what I believed was 30 marks, I woke to find them all erased. The wall blank, my fingers raw, my memory foggy. The photo of my mother had changed. In the frame now, she was younger, holding a child that wasn't me. I didn't recognize the boy's face, but he had my eyes. Behind them, in the background, the man from the photograph stood. Stephen. He was smiling. That night, I turned on the TV. Static. Then a voice, through the hiss. There is no version of this where you escape. I laughed again. Or maybe I cried. By then, the two felt the same. Eventually, I decided to open the door. Not to escape, not to run. To understand. The hallway was waiting, unchanged. I walked to the first door, marked 3E, and entered. The apartment inside was nearly identical. A little cleaner, a faint smell of cinnamon. But the photographs on the wall were different. Not mine, but versions of mine. Family portraits that never happened. A birthday where the cake had candles shaped like question marks. I checked the fridge. Inside was a tray of cupcakes and a note that read, "Happy 8th again. Maybe this time you'll make a better choice." I opened the freezer and found a child's drawing taped to the wall inside. Stick figures, a tall man, a shorter one with X's for eyes, a rectangle labeled wall. I turned around. Stephen stood at the doorway, but not as I remembered him. His body was mine, my height, my face, my eyes. But his presence was all wrong, like seeing yourself in a dream and realizing you're not the one in control. "You don't get to leave," he said. "Why?" I asked. "What do you want?" He smiled. "For you to remember forever." Then the lights went out. When they came back, I was back in the original 3E. Or maybe a version of it. The cracks in the walls were different now. The floors didn't creak in the same way. There was a mirror where the bookshelf used to be. My face in it was older. I checked the door. It still led to the hallway. I tried the stairwell. This time, I emerged into a hospital corridor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Machines beeped softly in rooms that stretched endlessly in both directions. A nurse passed by and nodded at me, like she knew me. I looked down at my hands. Blood. Not fresh. Dried under the fingernails. A loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Code 3E. Repeat. Code 3E." The lights flickered, then went black. When they came back on, I was in the apartment again. I don't know how long it's been now. Time here doesn't pass. It loops, repeats, shifts. Each version of the apartment is slightly more broken than the last. Sometimes I hear knocking from the wall behind the fridge. Sometimes I knock back. I still keep the journal. The entries fill themselves now, some in my voice, some in Stephen's. some in voices I don't recognize. I no longer ask if I'll escape. Now I ask only one thing. Which version of me gets to wake up tomorrow?